Happy birthday, dear Mom. My best friend in my life, my life, yeah. Happy birthday to you. Yay!
Woo! Woo! Yeah!
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to this time of sharing memories and sharing love with one another as what has been happening now for the last several minutes. We're brought together to remember Peggy Denise Brent Gorman today, a lady who to most in this place needs no introduction or reintroduction. She truly was one of a kind. Peggy was born the daughter of Lee and Betty Brent and the younger sister of Richard Brent. She and Tom married in December of 1978. They raised 3 biological children, Michelle, Tiffany, Dustin, and 10 other surrogate children. And it says that you know who you are. She's also a nana, as only she can do that to Joseph and Landon. Peggy has been a nationally certified respiratory therapist since 1976, and this was edited and edited again. She's worked at the Brokewood Hospital, specifically. She called it Brokewood instead of Brookwood. You changed it, and your dad changed it back. She's been there since 1977. She worked at the Caraway UAB and Park Plaza Hospital in Houston, Texas. She was a devout Christian, a member of the Palisades Church. She grew up at the West End Church, and that's been the brick and mortar of her spiritual and the core of her spiritual life. You know, Solomon tells us that there's a time for everything. There's a time for birth, time for death, time to plant, time to reap, time to destroy, time to build, time to cry, time to laugh. We'll probably do a little bit of both of that today. And we come here on a day like this, and we're not primarily here as mourners, even though that's what a lot of people think of when they come to activities like this. There will be some mourning, but that's not the primary reason we're here. We don't come here primarily to weep, though I'm sure there will be some tears that will be shed today. We come here on a day like this not in sadness, though there will be sadness inevitably. We come here today because we believe in the resurrection story of King Jesus. And we believe that not only do we believe ourselves that story, but Peggy Gorman believed that story. And because of that, we come here today primarily as people with a hope-filled expectation. A hope-filled expectation that while today we may put an exclamation point to the life that she lived in the current age, it is actually just a small comma at the beginning of her story of eternity. Eternity was in her heart, and eternity is certainly hers. Everyone is here because you had some kind of connection to Peggy. Some relationships span decades. Some were intimate, some less so. Some of you may not have even known Peggy, but you know somebody who was deeply influenced through her. And whether or not directly through her joyous spirit or indirectly through those she impacted with her joyous spirit, we're all brought here today because we're connected by this one lady. Funerals are special times, and a funeral memorial service, they're special times because they bring together a unique set of people. I always mention this. This is the only time this group of people will ever be in the same room together. It's really interesting if you think about it. Each person that walks this earth has a unique set of connections. And Peggy was a special connection to so many in this room. I selfishly really miss Peggy. Like many of you, I miss her because of her words, her kind words, her encouragement. I miss her for her loving spirit. But even more personally, And to some of you, this will not seem like a big deal, but if you ever do much public speaking, you will understand what I'm saying. And for me, it was a big deal. You see, when I look out each week, I kind of just look over everybody's heads. Because, if you look at people's faces, one, they can't really tell if you're looking at them or looking at the person behind them, so you just kind of look over everybody. And if you look at people's faces, it's really easy to get distracted, because when you look at somebody's face, there's no telling what you may see. You may see somebody sleeping. That's not real encouraging when you're speaking, though it happens. You might see a lot of yawns. You might see a lot of texting. Pretty sure sometimes you see somebody with an earpiece in and it's TikTok, but whatever, right? You see things, but everybody that speaks to kind of the same crowd each week, you have certain stop points visually that you make. And you see those same people each week, and you can make contact with them because they'll be engaged. Peggy was one of my stop points. She was always engaged. She was always encouraging. She was always present when we worshiped. Now, I knew that if I saw Peggy and she was checked out, I needed to check out. My time was up. As a matter of fact, though, I told Tom this, and I didn't know at the time whether or not I would share it or not, but a couple weeks after she had passed, I had a moment. It was just as clear as day. I was in the middle of preaching, and when you first start preaching and talking in front of people, all you can really think about is what you're talking about. But as time goes on, you get to where you can notice more and you can see more. And you would be amazed at the things that can sometimes go through my mind while I'm speaking. I'm glad you can't. But I was speaking one morning, and I looked over and I saw Peggy. I don't know what happened, but I saw Peggy, and I scanned over, and I said, wait a minute. That's not, wait a minute. And I scanned back, and I no longer saw her. And I told Tom that, and I said, I don't know if it was her or what. And Tom said, that was definitely her. I don't know all the details about how people, after they leave this life, interact in the spiritual realm. I don't know if it was my mind seeing or Peggy herself. I don't really know, don't really care. But in that moment, I realized how much I missed seeing her smiling engagement. I met Peggy over 7 years ago. There are dates and time that separate time. We changed the way we date time based on Jesus. And we changed certain events happen, like September 11th, and we talk about a pre-9/11 and a post-9/11. And in everybody's life, there are those dates that separate your life. The date before you get married, the day after you get married, the day before a child, and each subsequent child completely changes your life. I don't know about you, but I have those moments that I can point at. And I'm sure that Peggy would have had several of those that she could have mentioned. I'm going to mention one. I think this had to be a monumental day that shifted her life. I call them the BE and AE stages of her life. That is the before emoji and after emoji stages of her life. I never got to experience the before emoji stage of her life, but I know that it existed. And when we lost Peggy rather unexpectedly and quickly, I've thought a lot about those emojis. Now, if somebody came to me and said, somebody's going to get up at your funeral, and the thing they're going to talk about is emojis, I would probably think that I haven't done much with my life. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. We could dismiss all those emojis, and you laugh because many of you knew exactly what I meant. We could dismiss it as innocent fun or whatever it may be, but those emojis encouraged me a whole lot. They were in a digital age. I called them the digital version of a handwritten letter because it had her fingerprints on it. Nobody could emoji the way she did. And they really represented her character, though. They were fun, they were uplifting, they were unique, they were focused on others, they were encouraging, they were spirited, they were vibrant. And Peggy's family is going to come after I sit down and talk to you some, and they're going to share stories, and I know they're going to confirm all those things that I say about her. When I think about, from a spiritual standpoint, I think about Peggy, I immediately just think about the concept of encouragement. Barnabas was that person in the Bible that people talk about as the encourager. Acts 9 says that when he came to Jerusalem, this was Barnabas, and there's a rift happening, there's a dissension happening in the church. And they were all afraid of him. This was Saul, who has become Paul, and everybody's scared of Paul because Paul's been out helping and assisting murdering of Christians. And they didn't really believe he was a disciple. So Barnabas takes him under his wing and brings him to the apostles. You know, there's something disarming about somebody who's an encourager. When encouragers enter the room, it gets a lot harder to be volatile. It gets a lot harder. Encouragers naturally de-escalate situations. We spend a lot of money, a lot of time in this world talking about de-escalating situations. Peggy was one of the people, when she walked in the room, by her very presence, she had the sort of spirit that brought a levity and a groundedness and a sweet spirit to the room. There have been some times in my ministry life that I really would have loved to have been able to dial a Peggy and have her come in the room. When people start arguing and people start nitpicking, she would have brought it back to the big picture, that they were loved by their Creator. She was constantly focused on the big picture. I remember just this last Thanksgiving, Peggy and Tom had moved, and she was not here as much as she had been in the past just because of distance. And she came in that night, and we have a Thanksgiving service. It's one of my favorite times we have as a group each year, and we sit in the auditorium kind of like this, and we just pass the mic, and we tell each other what we're thankful for. And it's a special time. I lit up that night when I saw her walk in. I had not seen her in a while. And I knew that service was going to be better because she was there. Robert Kelly was a former member here. I don't know if he and Peggy had any type of relationship. I just don't know. But Robert was kind of like Peggy, never met a stranger. And in his last days, his health was deteriorating. And one day he looked at one of his nurses and he said, "I'm a true believer." And he said, "I know what you're all saying about me, but my life is just beginning." And I know the suddenness of losing Miss Peggy was tough. And it was a whirlwind. But I can't help but think that maybe that was exactly what she would have been saying when word started to spread about how serious what had happened to her was. "I know what you're all saying about me, but my life is just beginning." In 1 Thessalonians 4, Paul reminds us, he says, "Brothers and sisters, we don't want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope." We don't stand here as people who have no hope. We stand here as people who have a hope-filled expectation. For we believe that Jesus died, rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. The family wanted me to read Psalm 91:4. And that's a passage, it's a psalm of comfort. It's a psalm that's, the allusions that are there have been put out in artwork and in Christian history throughout Christian history. It's been a real impactful passage. And it's impactful for a good reason, I believe. It reads, "He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and your rampart." This is how Peggy lived. She lived under the covering of Jesus the Christ, under the covering of God, and with the sweet Holy Spirit living in her. And because of that, we come today as people who will mourn, and we will weep, and we will cry, but we don't come together as people who are without hope. I'm going to lead us in a word of prayer, and then there's a microphone set up here up front. Some of the family's going to come and just share some of their memories of Peggy. They've invited others who want to share a few thoughts. So after several of them go, if any of you want to, you'll have that opportunity to come share some thoughts about Peggy, and they want to hear some of you, and I think it'll be meaningful to them to hear those things. Let's have a word of prayer, and we're going to do that for a little while, and then I'll come up at the very end, give a few very brief thoughts, and close this out with prayer. God, we come together today as people who are filled with hope. We're filled with the Spirit of God. And we are in this place to celebrate a woman who had that Spirit living within her. There's no more pain, no more frustration, no more tiredness. All those things that as humans are on us at all times, she no longer deals with. And we thank you for the hope that we get to have when we come together in this place. Miss Peggy made such an impact on us. She was so good to us. She was so kind to us. She was so uplifting. The smile, the cheer, the constantly asking us about others and how our families do, and the constant focus on others. And God, we're thankful that we got the pleasure to know her. We're thankful for the time that we had with her. Help us in our grief and in our frustration of not having more time, not to forget. Help us not to forget the time that we did have, because it was meaningful. Thank you for your Son, Jesus, who gives us the hope that we get to have when we gather in this place. Be with this family as they continue to grieve in the days ahead. Just put your hand upon them. Let them have peace that passes understanding. In Jesus we pray, and amen.
Be careful. Mildred will find you.
Hey, you probably have to watch volume on this.
Well, wait a minute. I'm Tom. And part of me wants to, some of y'all know that I've spent a whole lot of time, the last 7 years of my life working with alcoholics and drug addicts, which is an extreme blessing of my own. So part of me wants to start it off by saying, "Hi, I'm Tom. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict." We're at a 12-step meeting, and you didn't know it, and there's going to be interventions on a few of you, but that'll be fun. But, I say that in jest, but I also want to say this too. This church has been wonderful in the fact that it also supports that process. They have a Narcotics Anonymous meeting that meets here, so I want to thank the church formally for being a part of that and helping people who are broken and lost, find a path to healthiness, which is what I've tried to do most of my life. I want to start by saying, do you see that nose on her? That's why I married her. She had the cutest little nose. And we were at Brookwood Mall because I opened Rich's department store there when it opened, and she was working there part-time, and I saw her over there. I was in the children's shoe department, and she was in children's clothing, and I saw her over there. And at the time, I was living with my parents. I was making some money. I was smoking pot and buying vinyl records. That was my life. So I met her, and the first time I met her, I looked at her nose and I said, "That is the cutest." And I wanted to just touch it. Just wanted to go, eat, And that's why I fell in love with her, initially. That was like, who could not love this? Look at that nose, And then eventually she told me she just fell in love with me because I could make an omelet. So that's as complicated as, seriously, that's as complicated as it got. And one of the wonderful blessings with her is that, at many times we could just look at each other and keep it really simple, and say what needs to be said. I got sober in 1991. And the only reason I say that is because that's when our relationship shifted, because we got married in 78, and we've been together since 76. And that's when everything shifted. We kind of went from having a physical, mental relationship to having more of an emotional and spiritual relationship, which I'm very blessed to have that in my life, because there's a whole lot of people in my life that never had that I know of, you know? And she was at the forefront of that. She called me her Forrest Gump, which is why I wore this shirt today. And that's because, you know, in one of the teachings from the standpoint of surrender and powerlessness, sometimes you just have to be able to look and just go, okay, and do it. You know, and Forrest Gump was really good at going, okay, and doing it, you know? So every time I didn't go okay and did it, you know, then there was Mildred. But then me and Mildred got to be really good friends too. So, in fact, in the end, I would just, since I got my social skills because I went to high school in New Jersey. Which isn't a whole lot of social skills, you know? So, and part of my family of origin is that you push buttons and stir it as much as you can, you know, just for giggles. So every once in a while I would do that just to see if Mildred was still there, and, you know, and she'd look at me and and then I would just look at her and touch her nose and say, I love you. You know, just making sure you're still there. But the last 30 years has been, I had a whole bunch of stuff written down, and it's like, this is crazy. One of the things that happened in the hospital, and I'm just going to go here because this is how Peggy lived. I got to the hospital, and then we went to palliative care, and we were in palliative care. It was the first day there, and the lady there said, "Listen, we need you to sit down and talk with us because basically we need you to make some adult decisions." You know, you know, and it happened to be National Crayon Day. So I went to this coffee area, and God loves me. The God of my understanding says, "Here, sit down, color." So I sat down, and there was a crayon book there and a bunch of crayons, so I just started coloring. And the lady came in and says, "Sir, we need to really have some answers to the questions." I says, "I'm coloring." I don't think she knew what to say when I finally looked at her and said, "Here's the deal. The child in me hurts. And I have to give that child permission to hurt. And I'm going to give it whatever time it needs to hurt. Because I know what happens as a drug addict and alcoholic if I don't give that time to that child to hurt. And I ain't going there." And she just looked at me like, "Oh my God, psych unit," you know? But at the end of the day, you know, one of the most wonderful things about our last 30 years, and I like what Daniel said, you know, C.S. Lewis has a wonderful line that says, "If one doesn't learn how to live in a childlike manner, they will behave childishly." You know, and I behave childishly a whole lot in my life. Selfish, self-centered, arrogant. I want what I want when I want it. I don't hear the word no. How dare you? Who do you think you're talking to? One of the most wonderful gifts of this whole process is the two of us could be childlike together. You know, which means, from my perspective, as a 12-step recovering spiritual guy, God's in the moment. Emotions are in the moment. Feelings are in the moment. And with that, I was intuitively able to handle situations that for years baffled me. And she helped me with that. We reinforced each other with that. And that's been one of the most wonderful gifts of this woman in my life. Is that the two of us, despite our differences, I mean, despite our differences, because we were polar opposites, okay? I was raised Catholic, had to strip that off of me so I could stay sane. And then 12-step, alcoholic, agnostic, crazy person, you know. And here's this nice Church of Christ lady, you know. Despite that, there was a phenomenal middle ground and a phenomenal balance. And both of us lived in that. Every once in a while we'd, and every once in a while we'd, and that's okay, you know. We were able to stay in the middle, you know, and this wonderful lady was able to do that, I think, with most of y'all. She could walk in and be in the middle, you know, and didn't have issue with being in the middle, and she'd say what she needed to say. And she might even say it in a way that you don't want to hear it, which is okay, because sometimes I needed a 2x4 on the head, because sometimes that's the only way I listen. So I sported today, Forrest Gump. Oh, and see these are her Elton John glasses. She would walk around with these on, and it was like, baby. She says, no, these are sporting. With which is her favorite place. She loved the Gulf. She loved the ocean. She loved the sand. She loved the smell of it. She loved everything about it. I couldn't stand it. But I was there, and I loved being there, and I would support her through all of that process, because I'm just not a big fan of it. It's hot, it's sticky, it's smelly, and what are y'all seeing it, you know? And then there's stuff that could eat you. So I'd rather go to the mountains, you know? So we're like, again, I want you to hear, we're polar opposites, but we're so close together. And if we can do this, you know, I don't get it. You know, I don't get it as I look out, and I don't get it, you know. So I want to start off by saying thank each and every single one of you for being here today. Thank you for just loving her back. Thank you. Let's see. She had some phrases. I don't know if y'all ever, but it was Parmesan cheese. There was Parmesan cheese didn't exist. It was Parmesan cheese? Parmesan cheese, yes. She had her own language. I don't know. Does anybody else know about this language? Yeah. Do you know about it, Tim? Yeah. She had her own language. There was, and I don't mean any disrespect to anything in this room, or with this anything, please. But God, Lord, there were these two places that she really was fascinated with, and one was Dick's Sporting Goods, and one was Tractor Supply. When we moved to Cleveland, she found Tractor Supply. She thought, this place is the bomb. Well, one day I looked at her and I says, well, where do you want to go? We got to go shopping. She says, yeah, we need to go to the Dick store. And I said, what are you talking about? She says, you know, the Dick store. You know where you buy. Oh, Dick's Supply Store. That's it. which she was talking about Tractor Supply, and then she had Dick's Sporting Goods mixed in. And then, and then there was the obsessive compulsive disorder, which is ACDC, the ACDC disorder, instead of obsessive compulsive. So I want you to know, living with her was a pure joy. It was, I didn't know what to expect sometimes, which was fine, it kept everything kind of, yay, It was childlike, and it was beautiful. So, thank you for being here, every single one of you. This is supposed to be happy. I am happy, actually. So if anybody wants to come up, please feel free. Because I know right now there's a kid in Minnesota. He lives up in Bemidji, which is like this far from Canada, eh? And while we were at the beach this past summer before last? Last summer, yeah, we were at the beach. Peggy introduced him to different sandwiches. Fried bologna, he had fried bologna, he thought that was. And mayonnaise and banana sandwiches. Me and her would wake up at least twice a week, and I'd have a mayonnaise and peanut butter sandwich, and she'd have a mayonnaise and banana sandwich, and we'd sit on the back porch and just listen to stuff and go, "Are you done?" I said, "I'm done." "Okay, let's go back to bed." She introduced people to food groups that they didn't know existed. There's a whole bunch of kids here that, that biologically are kids that are here, that are just part of the family. And I don't care, be a part of the family. It's all good, So we were a place that whatever was going on, you could come there and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So with that, if anybody wants to say anything, feel free. I ask that you limit it to 27 seconds. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway. Then we'll, and I did want to.
Are you going to read what you wrote now?
No.
You should. You just go for
No,
it.
I'm not. No, everybody will run. No, I'm just kidding. I did want to read this though. Because for me, this is how both of us tried to live our life. And everyone takes this prayer for granted, but it's probably the most powerful prayer in my life. All right, it's a Serenity Prayer. It's real simple, but doing it's like, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, the wisdom, usually through pain, to know the difference, living one day at a time, living one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, so that I may reasonably be happy in this life, reasonably, and supremely happy with him forever and ever in the next. It's been an honor and a blessing to live with her in this life. And thank you for being here. Whoever wants to come up, please feel free. I need some Kleenex, please, because my nose is just... And have fun.
I'm a little bit short of that mic. It works for me.
That's your mother's.
Hey, everyone.
Your mother.
Can you hear me better? He's a little bit taller. So, You know, whenever I'm sitting in a church, which I have been a lot recently, which is a blessing, and I start getting sad, and because of my mom's passing, the sun will start coming through the windows. And I know she's there. She's there with me. She's there not only at church, but it's just, I don't know, for whatever reason in that time, in that moment, in that place, in that situation, she's with me, and I feel it. She taught me how to be strong. She taught me to love music. You know, obviously, y'all follow us on Facebook, and we've been through a lot with Joe, and she taught me how to be a warrior and how to fight and not give up. You did too. You taught me how to love music as well. It's pure and it comes from the heart, and that's what she was. I remember y'all dancing in the house, seeing that as a kid, and doing the peace and the love and the joy that's involved in that. Even though there was some dysfunction, because we're not perfect. That's just the way that it is. Anybody that says that they're not dysfunctional, they're lying too, by the way. Yeah. I have another name for that, but I'm not going to really say it. But, you know, there's a couple people in this room today that I never thought that I would probably see again, and they're back over here. Yeah, and I'd say 3, yeah. And like, you know, he was saying when we first started that we're never all going to be in the same room again. And that's pretty special. I never thought it from that perspective. So it's fascinating. It's a beautiful thing that she has brought all of us together. And that just shows you what kind of a person she was, what kind of a heart she had, what kind of a soul she had too. So thank you guys so much for coming. So I don't know who wants to go next. You want to come up? This is my beautiful wife, Angie Faye.
I'm not a public speaker like the guys of the family, but I really wanted to speak about Miss Peggy. She was my mother-in-law, but she was also one of my best friends, and I just wanted to share some stuff about her. So. Okay. Oh, I won't be able to see. All right. Miss Peggy was not only my mother-in-law, but one of my best friends. I have so many things I could say about her, but one of the many things I want to share was that she was a woman of words. And like Mr. Tom said, she had many phrases and sayings. Some were completely heartfelt, and some were her own made-up phrases that we still giggle about. The one that leaves the biggest lasting impression on me was her phrase that went something like, "Oh baby, I'm just planting seeds." She was not a gardener in the literal sense, despite her loving of all nature and knowing the name of majority of all the trees, the bushes, and the flowers. She knew the names of them. She was a gardener of words. She spoke them and wrote them from her heart. Everyone sitting here today or who has mourned her loss from this earth has because she planted a seed in you. She made you feel special. She made you feel heard. Her work on this earth was planting the Lord's seeds. She might have planted words of faith for you to keep praying for something impossible, or gave you encouragement in your life to keep going when you felt like you were failing. This seed could have been planted in the strength that someone cared enough just to listen to you. I wouldn't be able to stand here today speaking in front of all of y'all without her encouragement for me to do the live Bible studies and get comfortable with sharing the Lord's words in front of people. She took the time with this with her family, her friends, her co-workers, her church members, and even complete strangers. Because I can't tell you how many times I was with her and that lady planted seeds with the stopping the whole line at Hardee's or wherever we were. Everybody was special to her. The Lord seemed to have given her this gift. Whether she knew the lasting impact it would truly have, she planted a seed in each one of our hearts. It would be an injustice to her memory to let the seeds wither away, to go without being nurtured and grown in the confusion of our grief. As we walk out the doors today, may we plant and grow these seeds of her words on good, fertile ground, so they prosper and flourish in our hearts, minds, and souls. May we also continue to plant seeds of words in people we meet, to take a moment to truly see God and the people, to see God and people the way she did and do her Lord's work, great justification. And I wanted to leave you with the parable of the seeds. And when a great crowd was gathering, and people from town after town came to him, and he said in a parable, a sower went out to sow his seed, and as he sowed, some fell among the path and was trampled underfoot. And the birds of the air devoured it, and some fell on the rock, and as it grew up, it withered away, because it had no moisture. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up with it and choked it. And some fell into good soil, and grew and yielded 100-fold. As he said these things, he called out, "Who has ears to hear, let them hear." And I wanted to add, I wrote this about 2 months ago, and I didn't know that he wanted to pass out the seeds, and so I really just think it was meant to be. So y'all continue to grow your seeds. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Her mini me's. Of course, y'all, everybody knows I'm Michelle. This is Tiffany, and these are her daughters. I can't really say that when I sat down to write about her, like my father, there was just I think I had 3 pages to start with, and I knew that was going to be way too long. First off, thank y'all for coming, and thank you for being here. I know she's up there smiling. I know she's on one of these pews somewhere, I'm sure. Trying to deal with grief, trying not to lose it or find it, as my father says, because I hate to cry. I don't like to cry. I don't like to cry in public. So I was sitting there in the Human Resources Department filling out my paperwork, and it's the little things you don't think about. Gosh, I hate this. Anyway, just the simple things that you really don't you don't think about when you lose somebody who's so important to you, as filling in an emergency contact. It was the first time I've ever had to do that without her here. And I sat and looked at the paper, and I was like, who am I going to put down? Like, she's always been my emergency contact. She's been my everything. She's been my phone call. She's been everything. And as I have my mask on, my tears are dripping onto the paper. Of course, the Human Resources lady is like, "Are you okay? Are you all right? Is everything okay?" And I was, explaining to her, I just lost my mom, and, just having to put that contact down, as simple as it is, it wasn't so simple. So writing all those things out would take forever. I've been following a page on Facebook. It's called Happiness, Hope, and Harsh Realities. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that page, but she lost her mom, and so she gets on there, and it's like a journal for her. And the words that she writes are just beautiful. And I read one of them, and they've helped me a lot. But it pretty much states everything that I feel and that we feel, except it was on paper, and a whole lot less than 5 pages. So I need some tissue. I don't think I need snot running down my face. All right.
Want me to wipe it for you?
Like she did. Come here, let me wipe your nose. All right. So the title of this, the journal entry was called, Did She Know? My mom is gone. I ache for her, but I'm no longer blessed by her presence. She is dead, and a piece of me is dead too. She slipped away quickly before I could get her insight, her knowledge, and her memories, and her expertise. She left before I could tell her everything. Have any boogers?
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, would you just STOP.
Okay. I find myself longing for answers to questions that pierce my soul. Sometimes when driving, and sometimes in the store, sometimes in the middle of the day. I gotta pick up the phone, and the harsh reality of her death reminds me that she won't answer. She isn't there. But it doesn't stop me from asking those questions. Did she know her smile could light up a room, and her laughter was contagious? The image pops in my head, and I remember it like it was yesterday. But she would, when something was really funny, or when we're stuck in an elevator at the beach, and my father was having a complete meltdown, and my mom and I just laughing. Those things pop in my mind. Her laughter and her smile were her best accessories. Did she know how truly loved she was? So deep and pure, so effortless, that it takes up a space in her heart that no other love can replace. Did she know how many people admired her, looked up to her, and would miss her when she was gone? Did she know the amount of people who saw her as an inspiration? Did she know how she changed our lives? Did she know that even from beyond, she would be pushing us to be the best version of ourselves, encouraging, motivating us to live our best lives, planting seeds all the time? Definitely a voice of reason. And she had a way of making it seem like it was your idea. Somehow or another, she was able to turn that around and, you know what, I think I will go to school. You know, I think I will, yeah, yeah. She had that knack. But did she know she was more than a mother? That she was the best teacher, friend, counselor, nurse, and the glue that held us together? Did she know the empty spaces she would leave behind? Did she know she was my hero, our best friend, our person, our everything? Did she know all that she was, all that she was loved for, her greatness, her never-ending legacy, her joy? Did she know she can't be replaced or forgotten? That she is missed so fiercely that it changes the composition of our hearts? If she didn't, I'm telling you now, Mom, you're loved and missed more powerful than words can describe. Your smile, your laugh, your touch, and your life are irreplaceable. You hold a piece of our soul, and nothing will ever change that. And we love you. And there's a saying that I actually put back there on the picture, but it's true. How lucky we are to have had something that makes saying goodbye so hard. And that's what she was. That's what she was. I don't know. How do you do it? And there goes my snot.
It's all
my
right.
nose.
Snot it out. Jen. Snot it out.
But I guess that we're still trying to figure that out. And I guess we'll be probably trying to figure that out until we see her again one day. She was a beautiful woman and a beautiful soul, a beautiful mom. She encompassed all of the things. And we will miss her terribly. But we're going to make you proud. I don't know how, but we will. You want to say something? No? No? Again, thank you for coming.
Not after last time. I don't know why it's doing that, but I'll do it again.
So, when I would go to their house in Pinson, we would always go to Chick-fil-A, and then we would go and I would get a toy. And sometimes in Chick-fil-A, or any area that we went to, there'd be people and they got on her nerves, and she called them minions. She called them minions. And, yeah. I think last time I saw her, I was in the hospital, but I don't think that was, before that, I had like a 3-hour talk with her, just about random things, and I think that was really the last time that I saw her. And the last movie that I watched with her was Snatched, which, if you know what that movie is, it's about like a bunch of like, which it's not a Nana movie to watch. But yeah. And, yeah. Thank you.
So, Miss Gorman meant a lot to me and a lot of people here, and even though I might not see y'all all the time, I still think of y'all as family. And Miss Gorman meant a lot to me. She was like my second mom, as she was to a lot of us, and she's gonna be greatly missed. And I love you guys. I love you too. That's family. Thank you for coming. And I'm not good with this public speaking, so I just had to say something.
He made me do it.
Good afternoon. Yes. I snuck in. I guess normally it would be tough to get up here and talk about in front of a bunch of people that you do not know, but this is going to be pretty easy, I think, for me. I mean, such a lovely, wonderful person that Miss Peggy is and was. I was one of those kids that was introduced to a sandwich that I had never heard of before. That would be the peanut butter and banana sandwich combination. But that was also after I think you had the station wagon at the time, and went to one of these water parks and was in the back, when was no such thing as safety. You just rode in the back of the station wagon, so probably in the early 80s. But Miss Peggy was just someone that came along often for me, and just was a person of love, a person of peace. At a time in my life where just, I was a teenage boy, pretty sure I was Michelle's first crush. In my mind. So, but I mean, she just, of course, everyone in this room, that she just means so much to everyone. And Tom, when the whole family moved to Aniana, I was just like a little puppy. I was all excited because that's where I grew up. That was my town, and still is my town, and was able to reconnect. But I don't know if anybody else knows this story, but when I was in my mid-20s and I started working out, I know I don't look like I did that, but I would have back spasms, so I would have to go to Brokewood and be late at night, and she always worked the graveyard shift, and so I was like, is Peggy Gorman working? And they found her, brought her down, and she was like, oh baby, it's gonna be okay. So she was the one that comforted me. She brought me comfort during that time. I did want to share something just about grief. Bear with me. So. This is from a book that I've been reading called Win the Day. It's just, grief is a good thing. It's a God thing. God is the one who created us with tear ducts, but emotions like grief can be inflated or deflated just like our memories. That's when we endanger ourselves with our own emotions. And Dr. Andrew Solomon said, depression is grief out of proportion to our circumstance, where grief is depression in proportion to our circumstance. Like physical wounds, if emotional wounds don't fully heal, they can become infected. If you try to shortcut grief, it will short-circuit your soul, but you can't get stuck in the stages of grief, in denial or anger or bargaining or depression. Somehow, some way, you've got to accept your new normal and find your new meaning. The good news, as our pastor just said, we don't grieve as those who have no hope. So, love you guys. Thank you guys.
Okay, so I'm the shy sister. So I grew up in the Gorman household. I literally, we lived like one house between, and Tiffany and Michelle and Dustin were my best friends. So much, so if they knew my father, but he was not a nice looking, he was very mean. Let's just say that. So one day he saw it. I could not go to Michelle. I could not go to their house. I could not go to the Gormans until my mother got off from work. Okay. Well, I snuck out anyway, and I went over to their house. And of course, Peggy just, she was like, it's okay, it's not gonna, it's gonna be all right. But I knew I was in for a world of trouble going back home, because my dad caught me over there, came and got me, didn't yell at me in front of them, but yes, I did. I got a nice discipline for that. But I just want to say, Peggy she was not ever judgmental, no matter how I act out on Facebook, social media, wherever, life, but she was always emojiing me. I got a lot of those messages. So even when the distance of our relationship, she still kept in touch. You guys were there for me when my father passed, and I remember she sent me nothing but emojis, but I knew what they meant. So I knew she was praying for me, and just being there for me. But life has a way of going full circle, because even as childhood friends and the distance between us, when Peggy and when the family moved back to Alabama, and she did work for Brookwood, every time we would be there, she was always there to visit our mother when she was in the hospital. When I was in the hospital, it didn't matter, my brother, she would always come and see about us. And then I did this thing with my husband and had a baby, and Michelle ended up being my nurse, and that was just funny how that happened. But anyway, the family, all of you, she is proud of you. You don't have to worry about making her proud, because you did that the day that you all entered her life. So you've always made her proud, and she has been proud of everyone that she has ever touched, those seeds that she planted. She's always with you, she's in you. And I can't tell, nobody in this room can tell you guys how to grieve, because it's been for me 3 years for my dad, and there are gonna be times you're gonna have your moment, and it's okay. It's okay. I'm sure she's riding in the car with you, I'm sure she's sitting next to you, but she lives in you, and I just know that you have that comfort every day. Love y'all. Okay, bye.
And please don't judge Tom's house in the early 80s. That was me cutting the grass.
If Joe can do this, I can do this. Huh? I don't know.
We'll be strong together.
Yeah. So my name's Angela. I'm the niece. I'm the adoptive daughter. Me and Peggy was my mom. She was my mama in life. I knew I could get up here because Joe did. So thanks, Joe. I don't even know how to put into words what all she did in my life, what all she helped me through. Held my hand through, carried me. She just was that person. She was the one always in your corner, your biggest cheerleader, even when you didn't have, faith in yourself. There was some low times in my life where I didn't, felt like I didn't have anybody, even though I did. She was that one person, I call it my porch sittings, because we'd go on the porch and we'd sit there and she'd just spit it out, whether I wanted to hear it or not. She was always honest with me, and at times I didn't like it. Most of the time I didn't like it, because she was always right.
That's love. That's
I know.
That's what you said.
And then other times I'd be like, oh, you're right, and so she loved me at times when I didn't feel that, and she's going to be deeply missed, and I knew if I didn't come up here to say that, I would regret it. So thank y'all for coming, and we love her, and she's going to be really missed, for sure.
I'm right behind you, Tom, if you were looking for me. Yeah, I'm right behind you. I've only been there about 15 minutes.
I did not come here to say a word, but I would be remiss if I didn't. To know Miss Peggy was to absolutely love her. Danielle and I have had the joy of sharing life with you guys the past 6-7 years. And in getting to know you is to see the fruit, the product of Miss Peggy. I want to share with you a word from 1 Timothy chapter 4. Do not neglect the spiritual gift. Excuse me. I thought I could do it without these. Sorry. Do not neglect the spiritual gift you have received through the prophecy spoken over you when the elders of the church laid their hands on you. All of your life, Miss Peggy has been pouring into you. Talk about her being the gardener. She has gardened into your life. You're products of that. Don't neglect that gift. What a precious gift that is. Know that you're loved and you're still loved. She's not gone because she lives in each and every one of you. God bless you.
All right, so I have a little bit of stage fright. All right, so bear with me. Now, I have a clear memory of one story with Nana. Is the elevator incident when we were all at the beach. So they were going up the elevator. I'm like, oh, I'll get ahead of them. So then I take the key with me, go up to our room, and then they get stuck in the elevator. And then I can't remember if they called me on my tablet or my phone. They're like, oh yeah, we're stuck. And I'm like, oh. So then I continue watching YouTube. So then eventually I hear knocking on the door. I'm like, oh, finally, that's where they are. So then I open the door, and they're like, so you heard the news? I'm like, mm-hmm. But one thing about losses, they're always there. It's all fun games, loves, crying, and then they're actually gone. And then you don't know what to do with yourself, English, yeah. Goodbye.
Close that. All right, we're going to close with a quick word of prayer. I always close anytime we spend time like this with a family, just to remind you, moments like this are not the death of a soul. They're not the death of your memories, and they're not the death of the influence that she has on your life. And there's a real sense in which she lives on, and she's also going to live on through you guys. And hold on to those memories, write them down so you don't forget them. Spend some time journaling. That influence, those are going to keep living on, and just let it live on. She'll be proud to see the work one day. All right, let's pray together. God, thank you for this time, this sacred time that we get to remember, and we get to spend time with one another, remembering such a sweet, sweet, sweet lady. God, we are eternally indebted for the time that we have had, both with Miss Peggy and in this place, in this time, to share with one another. We pray for safe travel as we dismiss. In Jesus we pray. Amen. I think we are dismissed. What kind of seeds did you bring? What kind of seeds did y'all bring? I didn't get that.